It's time to set out on another adventure with me, the casual competitor, and my dog Obi. Today we're doing an M21 draft with an interesting pack one pick one and a surprising end. Alright, jumping right in here, the rare in this pack was a double vision. I really did not want to take the double vision. I looked at the rest of the pack. My uncommons were not super stellar. The rewind is solid, I will give you that. And the two drop that you can flip a coin and gain life, it's kind of a gamble there. So I really didn't want to take a common for my pack one pick one, so I went with the double vision just because if it does start working, it goes crazy. It just does so much work. And also kind of hoping for a couple of the cards in here to table, the Scorching Dragonfire being one of them. So immediately I get a little bit of a reward here because that dragon is so flippin' powerful. That dragon, I absolutely love it. I can't say enough good things about this dragon. It's probably the most powerful flyer in this format at the moment, so I definitely was happy to take that. So going into pick 3 here, one of the cards in this pack that kind of privied my interest was definitely the Heartfire. He has prowess, so he works kind of good with the double vision. It wouldn't give him double prowess triggers, but he still is going to benefit from us playing a heavy number of instants and sorceries in our deck. Going into pick 4 here, I didn't really care too much to be taking the Burn Bright here, even though it would benefit a lot for us. I really wanted to kind of solidify into a second color, so I took the 3-1. I think it's one of the very powerful cards in black right now. Has a lot of potential to draw us extra cards and things like that. Immediately after, though, I decided to take a track down. This is when I kind of am splitting a little ways, but we end up seeing a couple cards. I end up going back and forth a little bit here. I take the Ogre because it is a body on board. Wanted to make sure I got my bodies out of the way quickly. That way, when I get to packs 2 and 3, I can take those really powerful instants and sorceries and not have to worry about if I have enough creatures to play. So here I am looking at the Burn Bright. I definitely am privy to the 3-3, but the Burn Bright just, I have to start taking things that would make that double vision worth purchase. So I end up going with that. In this pack, you know, I look at the 1-2, it has reach. I've actually seen this thing be super powerful, and I go back and forth, end up taking a Sure Strike for the same reasons. I just want to get purchase. I get a second track down, now I'm rolling green-red. I know what I'm doing. I know I want to be playing some big creatures that make use of these track downs, as well as getting some powerful instants and sorceries. Maybe even going Jund? Question mark. We'll see how this the rest of this packs go. The last few picks, obviously, very simple picks, you know, just taking what's available to me. So we roll in the pack 2 here. This is where I see a Weird, and I see a Quirin Dryad. Now, both of those are very powerful cards, and they do kind of similar things. The Weird, I think, is just a little bit better for us in the long run because it's any instant or sorcery. It's not just cards of another color. So then I get the 5/7, one of my favorite cards. Again, we have two very, very powerful top-end cards, so we are very happy to take this. An Invigorating Surge doubles counters and puts a +1/+1 counter, is an instant, works insanely well with the Weird. I just love it. We get a Ranger's Gal here. This is another easy pick. Have to take something like that. I take a minute to look at this guy. I don't really think a lot of him. I don't have enough instants and sorceries at this point to feel like he's going to be that much of a beater, so I end up taking the Goblin Wizardry. The Goblin Wizardry I really think is an okay card, but I liked it because it's doing everything we want to do. That Cultivate rolls around. Once again, another very easy pick to pick up. Same with this Colossal Dreadmaw. So right here we have an Empath. I really like this card. I think it's very powerful. There is a track down and a Cur in this pack. The Cur is also a very good early game creature, but I went with the Fierce Empath, so we make sure we have a finisher in this deck. We get a Death Toucher. We take a Village Rites and a second Death Toucher. Those dinosaurs are just so good at making sure the field stays somewhat clean. We end up getting a 4-2 late in the pack. I love that Panther. That Panther forces blocks. It's so good. It makes a lot of really tough decisions for your opponent. Going into this pack, we see a wasted rare slot. It always makes me sad, but we do end up seeing a Hydra that we end up taking. That is kind of helpful. Gives us almost 2 weirds right off the rip. In this pack, you can see it's catered heavily towards green-white counters. Very late in the pack to be seeing something like that. If that was a pack 1, I probably would have switched right there. End up taking a Scorching Dragonfire, and then we see a Garruk's Uprising, which just fits perfectly with our build. Immediately after that, I'm seeing this Furious Rites. I'm super excited about this. 2 3-drop enchantments that benefit from us playing pretty much everything else in our curve after that. Going into the next pack, there's only 1 red card, but I took a little bit of time to decide on it because I actually didn't know if it was going to function the way I thought it was. So a bit of a interesting note, the double vision does give me the effect, so I would draw 4 cards, but since it is part of the cast to discard a card, I would only discard 1 card. So discarding 1 card to draw 4 for 2 mana is definitely worth playing. Now going into this pack, I thought about taking the Return to Nature because it is an instant, but we ended up taking a Portcullis. I am not a huge fan of that card. I was a little bit more before this draft, and we'll get into it a little bit after. We see some games getting played here. I end up taking a Fungal Rebirth because 2 Fierce Empaths is a little much. Showing your opponent everything good in your deck is different from, hey, you just double blocked, triple blocked to get rid of my 6/6 Trampler. Let me just get that back and punish you for playing the game the way you should. Now, I see a 7/3. Once again, another easy pick. We have plenty of big creatures to benefit off of all these enchantments. I take another 4/3 for the same reason. Fury of the Bitten. Not a card I plan on playing, but it's in my colors, so I'm taking them. Rewind super late in the pack. I end up taking the Rewind and the Opt. Might have been a mistake not to go blue in this draft since there was so much floating around. But, lessons learned after the fact, I guess. Now, this is something I always do whenever I do any draft deck. I pull everything out of it. I will rarely put things in a sideboard whenever I am drafting. But in this case, I wanted to show you kind of my method of doing all this. I take everything out of the deck, and then I look it all over, and I kind of have an idea of what I want in the deck already. So I kind of pick several of the big cards and see where we're going with it. The Double Vision, you can see I paused on it. I really am still not even at this point sold that this card is good at all. I don't know if I picked up enough instants and sorceries for it, so what I'm just trying to do is see what I got in the green-red big creature category so I can go with just that kind of style of deck. One of the bigger things in this deck, though, is I do pick up some combat tricks, so I do end up putting in the Double Vision. I definitely think it's gonna see some purchase for me, and I'm telling you guys, once you see this thing in action, it just got ridiculous. Every game it actually saw the field and did some work for me. It was just so much fun to play. It is definitely a card I strongly suggest you trying out in Limited for that reason. So, that's a little bit there. I'm fixing my lands. I'm seeing where I'm at total number-wise, seeing what I want to be doing with these last few spots. This Heartfire Immolator, it ended up being a lot better for me than I thought it was. It did a lot of work. Got some really powerful creatures. For it just being a 2/2 that's able to sacrifice itself, the Prowess actually does do a lot of work on that card. I end up having a couple spots left here. The Burn Bright ends up making the cut. I was actually a little tempted to go 2 Burn Bright. I think I ended up going 1 off the top of my head. I might end up going again and double clicking on it. We'll see here in a second. Checking some numbers, checking to make sure how many creatures I had, all that good stuff. Definitely didn't want to run all instants and sorceries and not enough creatures. So I end up throwing a Portcullis in. Feel pretty confident about that. I think that Portcullis is just going to give me my early game body so that I don't have to worry too much about it. 10 creatures, 13 non-creatures for my Double Vision. I felt pretty good about that. There is a decent number of enchantments in it. I think there's a total of 3 or 4. I can't remember off the top of my head. I know the Furious Rise. I know the actual Double Vision itself, as well as Garruk's Uprising. So I think in total there was actually 3 because I'm pretty sure that's all of them. Now I'm looking everything over. I feel pretty confident about it. So I go ahead and decide to sleeve it up in one of my favorite sleeves ever, Watch Wolf. Oh my goodness, one of my favorite cards to begin with. Flavor text is off the charts. Only in Ravnica do the wolves watch the flock. I might be paraphrasing there. I don't know it off the top of my head. But it is still a great flavor text. I end up, looking at everything and changing a couple stuff around. The dragon definitely goes in the deck, but I wanted to make it the star of the deck list. So I changed it to the deck box, so to speak. First opponent here is Whole Grain Wheat with 2 T's. I like the name, very creative. We look at the first hand. It does not have any creatures, doesn't have any way of getting any creatures. So I decide to throw it back first chance we get. I don't really like hands without creatures. Kind of sucks because we are running only 10 of them, but you should be able to see one in your 40 right off the rip here. So that's why I wanted to throw it back. The 6 here I definitely liked a lot better. I ended up throwing the Colossal Dreadmaw on the bottom. I wanted to make sure that I had something to start out the game. I think that I can get back to it between my Fierce Empath or even a Cultivate just to shuffle it back in. So here on turn 3, I decide to play the Weird. It definitely is going to start seeing some purchase for us in later turns whenever we're playing some of these cards. Getting a lot of purchase out of every card in our hand. Every card buffs the Weird, makes it a lot stronger. And even if we get the opportunity to, we play a couple of these instants and sorceries, or even the Furious Rise in a couple turns, and then we just go ham by doubling the number of counters on it and making it into a 10-10 or a 20-20, depending on, how far this game goes and how many instants and sorceries we actually get to play. Alright, so this is one of the first track downs we're going to get to play in this draft. Right off the rip, I just love everything about it. It benefits. My Weird is getting bigger. Prowess Guy's getting bigger. But I also get the look. I see another track down. The 5/7. I don't want to show my opponent I have the 5/7 because he is in blue. Maybe he has a counter spell. He would hold up for it. So I put the land first. But I'm still going to draw both of them. And then I'm going to draw that track down just in case I need to do something else in the meantime. But that seems to be the right stack. So right here, once again, this is why this deck just seemed to do everything right for me. He gets the double block here, so I have the Sure Strike. I blow him out of the water. Sure Strike my guy, get a second trigger. Not only hit him for 4, but wipe his board at the same time. It just was everything I wanted to be doing at that point in the game. So even though he does have the capture sphere on my guy is still there. That weird is still capable of triggering my Furious Rites, so I do end up seeing a card off of it. That's really important to note for a lot of the removal in this set. There is Fate's Fetters, there is Capture Sphere, and other cards like that that just make your creatures unable to do anything, but they're still on the board, they still are there, and that's kind of relevant in this game. So unfortunately I didn't see land 6 here, so I do end up playing the track down. I have the Portcullis that I can play, so I do end up playing the track down first to see if there's something else I might want to play or if I get a land. And this is one of the more interesting ones. I see a whole bunch of instants here, and I kind of want to draw all of them. So I put the Burn Bright and the Ranger's Gout on the bottom though, just to draw the Scorching Dragonfire. I show him the Scorching Dragonfire, yes, but the Furious Rites will actually maybe give me a land because it's going to take the Scorching Dragonfire and stick it off to the side anyway. So right here he has a Garruk's Harbinger, a very powerful card, definitely one of his better cards that he's played up till this point, and a good rare that definitely probably pushed him in the green. He swings with the 3-2. I have the thought to Scorching Dragonfire his guy now, but instead I'm going to go to blocks and just trade my Heartfire with his first. Make sure he doesn't have a pump spell. He did leave 2 mana up. I am a little bit worried about like a Lofty Denial or something like that to try and protect his Garruk's Harbinger here. So in the end, he did in fact have a Ranger's Guy out to protect his Garruk's Harbinger. Little unfortunate on my part, also very unfortunate to be drawing a Cultivate right after that. I don't really have a very strong play this turn, besides going Cultivate and then just getting some lands and seeing what happens from there. So I am kind of at his mercy for this turn. But I do know my Cultivate's going to get through because he does only have 1 blue mana, so next turn, if everything goes according to plan, I will be slapping a very powerful creature out onto the battlefield. So I do have to call myself out here. I totally meant to sacrifice the Portcullis to draw a card. I didn't even think about it. I just clicked go to damage and didn't activate it. So I do decide to play the Hydra here off the top of the Furious Rites because it will go away at the end of turn if I don't. And I can always play my big creature later. This is kind of baiting out to see if he's got another counterspell in hand to begin with. I end up making mine a 4-4 so I can very easily trade with his Garruk's Harbinger if I have to. So he goes to attackers here with 2 attackers. His Death Toucher becomes a 4/4. I choose to block with the Hydra. Like I said, I'm kind of expecting him to do something about this Invigorating Surge, but it goes off without a hitch. My guy's now a 12/12, which is very powerful, very dangerous and scary, so I'm quite happy about it, even though he does follow up with another beater shortly after that, tapping out for his 4/6 that can tap my creatures down whenever he draws cards, which is pretty powerful. Alright, so we both kind of make a little bit of a misplay here. I'm going to call myself out on my own misplay, as well as talk about his here. It's not entirely a misplay. He chose to tap down my creature, which is perfectly fine if he was going to swing in this turn. He does it, and he immediately realizes he needs to leave his Death Toucher back to block that 12/12, as well as probably leave another creature back with him being at 11 life, because I have so many pump spells and abilities like that. So he does let me draw the 2 cards. I do get a Ranger's Guile, but I immediately throw it away because, long story short, I've seen people use Feat of Resistance to knock off enchantments before, and I got my protection and my hexproof confused. Yeah, so you get to see that wonderful play of me literally doing nothing. So when he plays the Opt here, I do think it is a bit of a weird play, only because I feel like I would have played it on my opponent's turn to tap down one of their creatures and stop them from attacking, rather than doing it when you're not going to be swinging yourself. So he isn't using the triggers too much, so I guess that's alright. I also do think he's probably looking for a solid answer to one of these creatures, as opposed to, you know, just biding time and waiting. So it finally rears its ugly head. There is the double vision in my hand, along with a very powerful instant that I would absolutely love to play with it. So I go to attackers. He does actually play a second Opt here, which is really good. He's going to tap down one of my creatures, which is definitely what I expected him to do with the first Opt. I'm not entirely sure why he played the first one on his turn, unless he had both in hand and just wanted to get one out of the way and trick me into thinking he didn't have anything. which, if so, congratulations, you really confused me. Whole grain wheat, it definitely did its job. It made me double think everything I thought when you played the second off. So this gets pretty wild here, I'm not gonna lie. I play the Garruk's Uprising, causes all those prowess triggers, draws a card, doesn't really give me anything crazy, but it gave all my creatures trample. That's the big kicker here, because it means that even if he blocks with the Death Toucher, he's taking a buku amount of damage from that 15-15. So I do give him a good game because this was one insane start to a draft. I definitely didn't think this deck was going to be as crazy as it was and have so many creative plays, but it definitely does have some really unique lines that enable me to do a lot of crazy stuff. So after that game one there, I decided to take out the Portcullis and put in a Return to Nature. I think it's a better play. So we roll into game two here against Snapkeep, another really fun name. I will be very disappointed if this guy ever mulligans. I don't think he ever should. That is a name that you have to keep every 7 that you have. I unfortunately can't though, but it's very easy for me to throw the 7-3 onto the bottom of my library and then roll with this 6. So I go to combat here, kind of hoping for a block. I'd really like to clear out a lot of his board if I can. He doesn't block though, so I do play the Scorching Dragonfire to kill that 3-3. That thing's very powerful and scary. I don't want it to roll around very long. At the same time, though, I do think about playing that Invigorating Surge just for a second, but I want to be conservative. I want to protect my board state somewhat, so I don't want to tap out for something like that and get completely blown out. He does, in fact, have a Legion's Judgment, so it's kind of a good thing I held it back. It is a card that is definitely going to be more beneficial on something on board than something that just gets wiped out immediately afterwards. Now, the Furious Rites does kind of throw away cards if you don't play them. So even though there is a part of me that wants to play the Goblin Wizardry this turn, I would much rather play the Fungal Rebirth. I go to combat to try and get maximum purchase out of the Fungal Rebirth. He does not block with any of his creatures. Not entirely surprising. Most of them would just be a speed bump against my 5/7. So I do make sure to tap correctly so I can replay the weird this turn as well. Something I've really realized about that 0-3 wall is that a lot of people do not block with it. I think that's a little weird. I do understand that it gives you so much power with your swinging creatures, but in a game like this, you can really save yourself a lot of life by blocking with them. I really do not understand why he didn't block the second time and I took him to 5. That's kind of very risky. There is cards out there that double creatures' powers, and then I would have just completely blown him out. This is a prime example why I absolutely love Trackdown. Trackdown just saved me so much time, really, because I'm able to throw all 3 of those lands right on the bottom. I don't want any of them, and I can draw an additional land. So literally that would have been 4 turns of me not drawing anything while he had the opportunity to top deck stuff. That's so powerful. I absolutely love that card. There is nothing in the world that will ever convince me that card's not good. We got this sweet triple block here. I do have that Invigorating Surge that I held back for a couple turns, so I'm going to completely blow him out here and just destroy his entire board state, leaving him with, I think, 2 creatures at the end of it all. I am not 100% sure on the math. We'll have to just wait and see. So I'm going to take a moment to like assess the board state here. I have a 5/7 and I have that goblin. He knows I have the sure strike in hand, and he also does know I have that land. So he has the 2/2 and the 0/3, but he has no cards in hand, so he kind of has to block with both of them next turn anyway, or he dies. I am not 100% sure if I've seen everything his deck can do. He definitely has some tricks left, I'm certain. So I have to play smart. I swing in with both of them. He's going to have to play smart and block each one of them individually, and then I'm going to have to sure strike. Like, it is just a set motion that we all know these are the right moves. This is what's going to happen. He knows I have the sure strike. I'm not just going to throw that away, and I end up wiping his board here. And then I go to my end step, and my Furious Rites gets my big 6/6 dragon. I have about 5 power to pump it there, so it is definitely another threat that he's going to have to deal with on top of that 5/7, and he's just got to hope for something good off the top, and it's taken him a minute, and it is just unfortunately a land, and that is that. Our next opponent here is Fat Trent, another creative name. I look at the first hand, I have both my colors, I have a Cultivate and I have an Fierce Empath, but I just don't think it's going to do it for me. I end up deciding to throw it back. It is probably the right move. I look at this hand, I have 2 lands once again, but I have some low drops I can play. I have a Ranger's Guile. I go kind of back and forth as to whether or not to throw the hate card for enchantments and artifacts onto the bottom of my library, or the Fungal Rebirth. I almost throw the Fungal Rebirth back, but then at the last second I'm like, no, let's go for that and keep the Fungal Rebirth. It slips more removal. So he's got a green-red land and a mountain over there, and he just destroyed my creature with a Scorching Dragonfire, so I kind of feel like I'm facing some kind of mirror match. I decide to go and throw out the Hydra, because if I get to that weird on turn 3, then both of them can start getting counters, and I can start building a really impressive board state. So now things are getting even weirder. He plays a red-white land right after playing a green-blue land. I still kind of feel like he could be in red-green and just be splashing those lands because they gain him life. I do see a land on turn 4 to play the weird. I am behind a land now, but it's not the end of the world to be behind one land. Stumbling, but not really falling type deal. So finally we see the first play of the game from Fat Trent here. He makes 2 1/1 Goblin Wizards, and interestingly enough he chooses to double block on my Hydra. He definitely has a lot of respect for it. My first instinct is to Burn Bright and take out both of them, but then I think for a second, I think, wait, no, if I play the Ranger's Guile, it will actually get the counter from the weird as well. That will turn it into a 3/3, it will kill both his creatures, and I will keep both of mine alive, and also punch in for 3. So I think it's the better move here, and that's what I end up deciding to do. So we see a second Goblin Wizardry from him here. We go to blockers. I expect some blocks to happen. I think last turn kind of made him a little bit sour. He doesn't want to walk into another trap. So instead, he lets it get through, and I get to end up playing the Panther on main phase 2. So he's taking a good long time to look at that track down, try to figure out what the right move is here. He has several options, and I'm certain that they are all kind of good in their own way. It is very interesting what he ends up deciding to take. It ends up telling me a little bit more about his deck, but also gives him the opportunity to finally get off of 4 lands, which I think is something that was bothering him a little bit. He ends up getting a black-white land, which now means that he's assembled Voltron. He has all 5 colors on his land base. There's very few decks in this format that I think matter with that. Sanctum of All is the only 5-color card that's out there, so I have a very strong feeling that he's playing Shrines, and he is going to try and jet out some Shrines in the next few turns. A few notes here is that Panther is very powerful in this situation. He only has 2 mana available. He ends up throwing a possibility, as you can see, which does give him some prowess triggers, so he doesn't have to double block. He does throw away a blue creature, blocks with one of the Goblin Wizards against the Panther because he has to. That's part of that card's abilities. And then he throws one in front of the Weird, and he mitigates 2 more points of damage off of him. The Garruk's Uprising does give it trample, though, so I do end up just steamrolling over the second one with the Weird. Like I said, right when he played the Black Land, I had a very strong feeling that this was a Shrines-based deck, but one of the benefits of that type of deck is that you get to take every powerful card that passes your way, because everything's technically in your colors. This is a prime example of it. This is a blue-red card that I didn't see coming anywhere, and it is so powerful. It made a 5/5, and he's able to get a card back from his graveyard. I'm not 100% sure I would have taken the Goblin Wizardry when he has a Thrill of Possibility in there, but it still does its job. He plays another land and passes turn. I know he's got the Goblin Wizards, but I kind of have the ability to just go, here's a 6/6, keep my board pretty well up to date. And also, I could have double played here, but I decided against it. I thought it was better to go defensive, play the 6/6. I know that 6 power is going to be a game changer, and I can just sit back one turn and then hopefully crush him next turn by playing 2 instants and just blowing him out with a Burn Bright that gets 6 more power across the board. So, like I said, the second he played the black-white land, once again, I knew it was coming eventually. That's the moneymaker. That's the one that he's going to gain a life, and I'm going to lose a life for each shrine he controls. So the more shrines he gets, the better that card gets. And draining me for 5 a turn would be ridiculous. But unfortunately, I just have the proper board state that I can just not let anything real big happen here. He plays the Goblin Wizards, which I'm not at all concerned by. He has 7 power to mitigate 7 points of damage since all my creatures have trample. He chooses his blocks, but I'm going to end up double playing those 2 instants in my hand and just blowing them out of the water, and that's going to kind of be the finishing blow here, and that's going to be the end of the game. And unfortunately, he didn't get to play any more shrines than just the one. So I got a little greedy here against Floating Fish 991. I definitely have some powerful cards in hand. I have my Double Vision, I have my 5/7 Vigilant Creature, and I have 2 lands, and I have a Cultivate, which I think will get me out of this bind pretty quickly. What's the odds of me not seeing a land by turn 3? So unfortunately, not only do I not see a land by turn 3, but I don't see anything I can play by turn 3. So I'm forced to throw something back. I do have the Fungal Rebirth in hand and I think might be able to get something back from my graveyard. So I choose to get rid of one of the 2 permanents in my hand, which is the Double Vision, which may or may not have been the right choice, but at this point in the game it was what I considered to be the best option. Unfortunately, it does happen again. I am now deciding to discard something. I forgot that I didn't go to end step yet, so I try to play the Fierce Empath, which it won't let me do, and then I just have to pitch that away as well. So he just plays a Dousing Pterodon here, and I'm able to kill it without any real, interaction. I'm a little bit confused with what he's doing with all this land. I'm hoping this Cultivate pulls me back into the game, and I grab 2 lands and Windmill Slam them onto the ground. I cannot say enough good things about that 3/1. Even though it's across the battlefield from me, it is super unfortunate to see there, but it is such a powerful card. I love it so much. It is a 3/1 that if you discard a card, it gains indestructible and you have to tap it. Usually not super relevant. The tap effect though, because you are normally swinging with it and then just discarding something to get rid of a blocker in your way, and it just feigns so much because especially in a set with Feet of Resistance and other white pump spells, you can do so much damage with that card. It is unreal. So he's got the 3/1, I have a Furious Rites, and he ends up playing a Rambunctious Mutt to get rid of my Furious Rites, which is super unfortunate. It probably would have changed the game if he left it out there, but obviously, that's not the case. I play my 5/7 thinking I'm going to be able to recuperate some here, maybe get through a couple hits, and also be able to block some of his stuff. He untaps and he plays a land for turn, and then he goes ahead and has the Legion's Judgment. Not at all surprising. It definitely gets him in for 6. He's winning this game already, and he takes me to 11, and I do not draw a creature off of that either. So I'm really in a tough bind because I really was hoping to see another creature so I could just play another big threat this turn. Instead, I have to play a land or go ahead and play my track down. I choose to play the track down first, see what I get. There's a Goblin Wizardry I want to put to the front, but it is not a creature, so it does not actually give it to me. It would just leave it there for me to grab next turn. So I do choose to put a land there because I'm not going to leave the Goblin Wizardry for him to just see it. I'll go ahead and take the free land and then end up playing the Fungal Rebirth to get back my 6/5, and hopefully that will do some damage here and in the next coming turns. I'm feeling pretty confident that I'll be able to recuperate some here. I am expecting to see another creature enter the battlefield, but instead it's Ugin, which just devastates me. He's able to plus Ugin here, which does 3 damage directly to my face, takes me all the way down to 2 on this swing, and then I am left with thinking, okay, how do I recuperate from this? I don't have a way to get rid of Ugin, I don't have a way to get rid of both of his creatures, so unfortunately it's just going to be a scoop for me. Our next opponent here is Ixel Mixel, who, fun fact, is also the DJ brother to Fibblethip. Looking at this first hand here, I have a Sure Strike, a Track Down, the Garruk 7/3, and also the Colossal Dreadmouth 3 forests, but I don't think that's going to be a problem with that track down. I think I'll be able to get out of it. It's definitely feeling like a keep to me, and once my opponent decides, I'm pretty okay with starting the game with this and seeing where it goes from here. So I do draw a cultivate here, which is helpful if I don't see any red sources, which I don't off the track down. Looking at what I have there, though, I've decided to keep the weird and throw the other 2 onto the bottom. Try to give me an opportunity to draw that red land next turn and just put the weird into play. If not, I will definitely be cultivating and grabbing 2 mountains and seeing what I can pull off from there. So I have a couple different optional plays here. I could tap 4 mana, play the Panther, and hold up the Ranger's Guile, or I could play the Weird and hold up 2 mana and have the Sure Strike. Now, either play is pretty fine. I do end up deciding going with the Weird is the better option, because with that Sure Strike I could potentially just blow him out and get rid of that 3-2 and not even have to worry about it. Now he does see a black land here, and we kind of see a little bit of his teeth as he plays an Indulgent Partitioner. We now know it's a black-white life gain deck, which is a very powerful build. Indulgent Partitioner can run away with games very quickly. So I'm going to block here and Sure Strike, and basically if that goes off without a hitch, I'm in a pretty good spot, except I got to get that 1-4 out of the air before it can start doing a massive amount of damage to me. So while I thought about just going ahead and playing a creature on main phase 1, I choose instead to go to combat, see if he does block before playing a Colossal Dreadmaw. Now, I have him at 19, he has the Partitioner. I'm not entirely worried about it, but I'd really like to get it off the battlefield. He ends up playing a Revitalize, which gains him 3 life, and then he also follows up by playing a Charger, which will give him another 3 damage in the air. So he's going to hit me for 6 because of the Indulgent Partitioner's ability. Get a Griffin. Everything's going his way. I end up top decking a potential kill spell for his. I got to be careful how I use it, but that Heart Fire Immolator is definitely going to be able to get that 1-4 out of the battlefield if everything goes according to plan. So I did take a moment here to assess the situation. I could have saved my Heartfire to block and then did all this, but I really didn't want to go to pass turn, him on tap, and him have a Feat of Resistance to protect against the Heartfire Immolator. So instead I chose to do it on my turn, get the extra point of damage in while I was swinging with both of my creatures anyway. I knew I'd be getting some on the crackback, but I figured I'd be able to stabilize somewhat. So I believe I mentioned this earlier about those 0-3 walls. Nobody ever blocks with them. They just kind of sit on the battlefield almost as if they're enchantments. And this is a prime example. He did not block, and I end up actually getting this game with exact lethal damage. I was just extremely surprised to be able to pull that off. So right off the rip here against Master Beta, it is definitely a keepable hand. I have a track down, I have a 4-drop, I have a Sure Strike and a Ranger's Guile to protect my creature after turn 4. I like it a lot. I decided to keep it right off the rip. So once again, there's the classic turn 2 track down. I see 2 green lands, I see a double vision. I only have 1 red source at the moment though, so I do decide to bottom the double vision and leave the lands on top because I do have that 6-drop in there that I really want to get to. I really like that 5/7. It is so good. So I leave 2 lands on top, show him one of them, and that's going to be my turn 2 there. So I do think this is an interesting use of Crash down there. He tried to find a land off of it. It did not work out for him. So unfortunately, he's going to be playing a land behind for pretty much the rest of this game. It's not super relevant because he does see the land here on turn 4. But it does kind of put me in a situation where I'm both going first and second because I get to draw the additional card, but I'm also ahead on my land count. So with all the other track downs, this one once again does so much work for me because I get to look at 3 lands. I don't really want any of them, but I do end up taking the dual land here just because it's 3rd red source. In case I hit the dragon, I have a little bit of power to pump into it, and it's also a turn in which I don't plan on playing anything else, so playing a tap land this turn is not the end of the world. So, considering his name is Master Beta, it made me think that maybe he might be a combo player. It reminds me of an old joke that I once heard, which is aggro players like to play with their cards, control players like to play with your cards, and combo players like to play with themselves. And so that's just what made me think about it. But it's very interesting, his next play here. It takes him a little bit of time to play it, but he ends up playing a Teferi's Tutelage. You see it right there. It triggers the weird, and he gets to mill me 2 cards every time he draws a card, a very powerful card. It's going to come back to bite him here in a turn or two. I'll get to that whenever it happens, though. So here he targets my 5/7. It lets me draw 2 cards. I get a Fungal Rebirth, and then right off the top is that Enchantment Destruction spell I added in after that first game. So I am totally able to get rid of his Teferi's Tutelage. Like I said, it kind of bite him in the butt, because if he would have played a little differently, not worried about the 5/7 for a single turn, he would have actually milled me out of that card. But because he targeted it, everything kind of fell my way. I was able to get Destruction for Teferi's Tutelage, get that off the board, and also get my 5/7 back. And even though I'm taking 3 this turn, I only go to 13. I'm not too concerned about it. I replay that 5/7, and he just wasted 3 cards out of his deck to try and get rid of it in the first place. So he's going to go ahead and play this Experimental Overload. It's a blue-red spell. He gets to make a token that's equal to the number of instants and sorcerers in his graveyard, as well as buy back one of them. So he gets the same burn spell he used last time. This is very interesting because I feel like he's going to try and do the same thing to get my 5/7 off the board. Only difference is obviously we're going to have more land this time around, and we do have that Ranger's Guile to protect our creature this time. So if he goes that route, I actually get to draw the 2 cards from the target, and then I get to save it with the Ranger's Guile, which is just pure value. Obviously here he plays this Rain, which allows him to draw 3 cards, then he discards a card. That would have been absolutely devastating if that Teferi's Tutelage was still rolling around on board, because that means not only from the draw for turn, but this card alone would have milled me a total of 8 cards, and in a 40-card deck, that's literally almost a quarter of my deck gone. So he doesn't flag block here with the weird token. At the time, I just let it happen. I assumed he was going to play that burn spell. I do decide to play this Hydra from my hand to kind of bait out a counter spell, see what he's got going on. So I'm going to leave up 2 mana. He could have enough mana to do both his burn spell and a Lofty Denial, which would make me pay 1, or 4 if he controlled a flyer, which he doesn't control the flyer at the moment. So I decide to leave up 2 lands. Double check, make sure I'm leaving up 2 green sources so I don't have to worry about what mana I pay, and then just go ahead and play a nice hefty Hydra here, which next turn, if it's still rolling around, I can definitely put some counters onto it and make it into a very powerful beater. So obviously, I did protect my creature. I end up drawing some gas off of both of the trigger and then for my turn. So this turn I actually do a nice little combo play. He played 2 creatures to block some of my creatures. So just as wide as he went, I decided to go just as wide back. I play a weird, and then I'm also going to play the Heartfire, and that's going to set up a little bit of board state. Both those cards work great together, and on top of that, I have the instants in my hands to pump both of them. So he ends up playing this Enthralling Hold, which is a very interesting enchantment card. It can non-enchant an untapped creature, but he does gain control of that creature. So he gets to steal my 6/6, which is kinda okay at this point in the game. Next turn I have a lot of powerful creatures I can attack with, so I'm not feeling too concerned about the 6/6 at the moment. So as I go to combat here, I do decide to swing with a couple of my creatures. I leave back the Heartfire, but I do swing in with the Weird and the 5/7. I'm expecting a block here, at least on the Weird. I don't think that there is much else he could do. He could double block my 5/7, doesn't kill it, and he could double block the Weird, but I could blow him out with like the Sure Strike in my hand that I have, but he doesn't know about. Both of those cards are going to be really crucial in this turn. He decides to take it, and it takes me a minute to do the math in my head to decide whether it's worth it to try and win this game at this exact moment. I do, in fact, do the math. My Weird will get a counter whenever I play the Sure Strike. Then I play the Invigorating Surge, which will give it another counter, and then another counter from the actual spell resolving, and then doubling those counters would be a total of 6 counters on it, as well as the +3. I have exactly lethal since he did not block. And that is something really interesting to note, is the fact that I had these instants in my hand and it was able to just get there with exact damage, not once but twice in this draft so far. It's just been really interesting to see how these instants and sorceries really kind of combo play very well with the Weird that I have. Our next opponent here is Gretchen Wieners. I absolutely love this name. One of the best movies of the era. Mean Girls was a really good movie. I enjoyed it a lot. I look at this 7. I definitely think it's keepable. I got a Ranger's Guile. I got a Scorching Dragonfire. I got a 4-drop. And 3 lands, which is a healthy mix of mountains and 1 forest there. So once again, another classic turn 2 track down. I go ahead and look at all 3 of them. I have a Fierce Empath, I have a Heartfire Immolator, and I have a Mountain. I do decide to put the Heartfire Immolator on top. I definitely want to draw that this turn. I do go back and forth on whether or not to keep that Mountain. I end up throwing the Mountain on the bottom though, however, because I want to make sure I get that second green source so that I am able to play my 6-drop on turn 6 without any problems. So I get the Heartfire Immolator and I pass turn here. My opponent ends up seeing a 3rd land. We already see that there's a black and a white land there, and they end up playing the Partitioner here, which that Indulgent Partitioner is so dang powerful. I've said it before in the last game we saw it in. So I'm going to end up having to figure out how I'm going to double removal this creature from the battlefield before it becomes an actual threat. So we go to end step here. I get the trigger. It takes 3 damage off, and I am now taking 4 damage total from a 1/4 flyer, which is just extremely powerful. I do want to get rid of it, but there's a part of me that wants to try to play it safe. The 2 mana up is really kind of bothering me. I feel like they got a feeder resistance to protect their flyer. It makes sense to me that they would be playing really conservative because that card can just win so many games. So I play the Panther here. She's probably going to have some amount of life gain next turn, but I don't think it's going to be as drastic as last turn. She untaps, and lo and behold, Gretchen Wieners just pulls it out with a second Revitalize here. That really kind of does a whole bunch of damage. They've gained 8 life already, and they're going to be swinging for another one in the air that I can't do anything about. I'm still very wary, though. This is a situation where I don't really like it. I don't like using 2 removal spells when they have the ability to be like, okay, it will take 2 damage, and then I'll just protect it. So I really don't want to go and be tapping out for all that. I have some pump spells. I have some things. They left themselves open, so I can definitely swing with the 4/2. I kind of want to swing with both of them, but once again, I don't want to invest too much in a card that I'm just going to sacrifice at end step anyway. So I just end up swinging with the 4/2 and then holding back for an opportunity in which I can destroy their 1/4. So this is almost exactly the opportunity I was waiting for. They've only left up 1 black mana. I'm trying to decide the best route to play here. I kind of want to burn it and then destroy that creature. I think it's the better move here because that Scorching Dragonfire is going to make sure that they can't get it back from their graveyard. It does take me down 2 cards to get rid of their 1, but that 1, as you've seen in this game, has done the only damage to me, which is a total of 8 from 1 card. So I really like this situation here. Their deck is definitely built around life gain. Gretchen Wieners has a really strong deck. Black-White Life Gain is one of my favorite decks to play in this format. So I'm totally fine trading my 4/2 for another lifelinker from their side of the battlefield and following up by playing the 5/7. I feel really confident at this point that the 5/7 is going to do a whole bunch of work for me. It definitely is better than seeing anything else that's in my hand at the moment. I did consider saving the Panther. In hindsight, I probably should have. We'll get back to that whenever that time comes. Also worth noting, as I said when we played the Scorching Dragonfire, it did exile that 1/4, which turned out to be super relevant because they played the 4-drop spell that allows them to get 2 cards back from their graveyard, which they would have gotten back both of their creatures at that point, as opposed to just getting back 1, which was really powerful at the time. I was feeling really confident. I had gotten rid of their engine. Everything's looking okay. I have the 5/7 on the battlefield. I have a lot of life to go through for my opponent, and I feel like in this point in the game, things might be going my way. They play a 4/3 lifelinker here, and they also just kind of sit back and chill, and I am just staring down this 4/3 lifelinker when I have a 5/7. Everything's looking good. So this is a worst case scenario here. They play Gormund, which I have literally nothing in my hand that can interact with it whatsoever. My 5/7 just is going to get sent to the graveyard. I don't have any other creatures. Like I said, maybe I should have been a little bit more conservative with the Panther. They would have probably still played their same line of play, but I would have had 2 creatures. I would have been able to sacrifice the 4/2, gained a point of life, and saved my 5/7 from actually being sent to the graveyard. Fortunately, that's not the case. I don't top deck another creature. They double play 2 creatures here, which slaps a whole bunch of power into the air. They have a 2/3 Death Toucher, and they have a 6/6 Demon, and the 6/6 Demon's going to crash in and take me all the way to 8. I really need to top deck my Dragon here. It's pretty much the only thing that's going to be able to get me out of this game. If I don't get it, it's going to be curtains for this game, and we'll be going to the last game that I could potentially lose before we would be out of this draft. So, unfortunately, that is going to be the game. So, next player we have here is Rojo13, which is a very creative name. I like it a lot. It is a reference to Final Fantasy VII's Red 13, because Rojo is Spanish for red. Our starting 7 here has a Fierce Empath, a Double Vision, Furious Rites, and a Burn Bright. While Fierce Empath is the only creature we have, we definitely have the opportunity to draw or even go get something very powerful, so I think it's a good starting point. So not only did we see most of these games have a turn 2 track down, but all of them have been really, really helpful and really, really creative. This one is one that I have a little bit of trouble with. I'm not sure if I want to draw that Hydra. I don't really have a whole bunch of land to pump into it. I don't really have anything else that goes along with it. I definitely want to have that to give my creatures trample, so I do decide to draw the land and then get the Garruk's Uprising. The only major issue here is if I put the Hydra on that 3rd slot, I can't play my Fierce Empath next turn, which is what I want to do. That's why I'm having such a hard time about whether or not I want to draw the Garruk's Uprising or if I want to draw the Hydra there. So here on turn 3, my opponent plays a dub onto their 1/1 lifelinker. I really like this play. I think this play is very powerful. That thing can get +3/+3 for 5 mana later. You already make it a 3/3 first striker. Anything that can pump that you can put dub onto, since dub gives first strike, is very powerful. So I go and get my 5/7, so I have something to block it. I have something that's going to have a big enough back end that even if they pay the 5 into pumping it, it's not going to die. So they end up playing the Selfless Savior here on turn 4, and it really puts me in a bind, because now that 3/3 is not going to die. They'll be able to save it at least once, so I have to go and look for something to try and find an answer. That track down is so good. It shows me exactly what I want to see. I'm going to get the Scorching Dragon Fire to try and deal 3 damage to it, and I'm also going to get the Heartfire Emulator, which could also try to deal 3 damage to it. So both of those cards is actually going to make this game a whole lot more interesting, because I'm going to have interaction and try to be able to get that 3/3 with dub off the battlefield before it just gains him too much life and runs away with the game. So unfortunately, I've gone all the way down to 6 at this point, but I do end up playing my Heartfire emulator this turn. I do have the ability to do a whole bunch of stuff. I decide that that is just going to be good enough. I have some tricks for his combat on next turn, though. So we move the blocks here, and I block his Anointed with my Heartfire. I'm going to go ahead and waste a Ranger's Guile, technically, to turn my creature into a 4/4. Once that resolves, I'm going to then go ahead and sacrifice it to deal 4 damage to his creature, try to get it off the board. Now, he does have 2 mana up, so it'd be super unfortunate if he had a Feat of Resistance here, but it's something I have to try and do now. I don't want him to gain that life this turn, and if he doesn't, he has to sacrifice the dog in order to save it, and that means I take no damage and I stabilize at 6 again. So fortunately, he not only didn't have the Feat of Resistance, but it obviously opened me up completely to go this turn and go ahead and destroy his creature. Also play a Garruk's Uprising because there's nothing on board, but next turn I'll be able to play my 6-drop hopefully and slap down a very powerful card. I don't draw the land here. I do have the Goblin Wizardry, so next turn I will have some board state against his 0/3 walls, which are just kind of sitting there and not doing much at the moment because he doesn't have anything to attack with. So here we go, we got the land, we play the 5/7 Vigilant creature, we draw a card, we draw another powerful creature, we decide not to attack with our 1/1s, we're just going to hold those back, and he has a 1/3 across the board that can become a 3/3 whenever he attacks because he does have the 2 walls, but I don't think he's willing to throw that into a 5/7 at the moment. So this is a pretty interesting play. He does take my 5/7 here. I do get to draw 2 cards. It is only 2 lands, but that is somewhat relevant with the fact that I'm still ahead 2 cards. He does get to swing 7 here, and he swings with his other creature. I choose to block both of them. The Goblin Wizards have kind of done their job by keeping me alive for a couple turns, or in fact, just this one turn. But then from there, I get my 5/7 right back. Obviously, the Act of Treason only acts for a single turn. It does not stay on the battlefield. So I'm going to go ahead and slap down a Weird here, and I do believe that this is the right move to just start building board state. I get the Garruk's Uprising trigger, I grab a Cultivate, and things are going to kind of get a little crazy from here because the Double Vision is in my hand with nothing but instants at this point. So he gets his Battle Rattle Shaman, which is super fun to me because he knows he's not attacking, so he chooses to put it on my own creature, and that just cracked me up when he first did it. It was a really interesting move to be like, hey, I'm not attacking, but I still get this trigger, so why not have this? I go ahead and play the Double Vision on my turn, start getting somewhere with a whole bunch of extra triggers and extra abilities going off. I also look at the rest of the cards in my hand, and I do believe I go with the Cultivate so I can draw extra cards here. So once again, as I mentioned earlier, these 0/3 walls, I think people severely overvalue them. Like, I get the fact that they give that 1 power to creatures, but it just is a situation where he could have fogged that 5 damage with an 0-3 wall that's kind of already done its job. He's already knocked me all the way down to 6. I don't think you need the extra points of damage. I think you just need to get through at this point and to stop me from gaining too much back as I'm swinging in with this 5-7. So fogging it for 1 or 2 turns by just throwing a wall in the way would have probably made a world of difference in this game. I was mistaken last turn, and I played the Furious Rites. This turn, though, I am playing that Cultivate, which is going to pull 4 lands out of my deck. And you can see, as I'm grabbing those lands, that I only have 3 opportunities to draw lands, and with me drawing 2 cards a turn at this point, it is just so powerful. I don't have many bad draws at this point, because I have so many lands out of my deck, and I just have such a massive board state. I'm going to go ahead and swing with a couple creatures here and see what happens. This right here is exactly what I'm talking about. Like I said, I didn't have many opportunities to draw land, but instead I drew a Sure Strike. So now I have 3 instants I can play next turn. He top decks another land. It is just super unfortunate that he's going to not see much in these last few turns. Meanwhile, I'm just going to stack a counter on my guy by getting rid of 2 cards from his graveyard. It's the best option. Something that was interesting to me was I didn't get to pick a different mode for the second Return to Nature. I did not know that's how that card worked. I assumed I could choose 2 different modes since I'm copying the spell, but I guess once you choose the mode, that's when it actually goes on the stack. And that's right, for all that bragging about not being able to top lands once you only have 3 lands in your deck, my deck just decides to be like, haha, got you, here's a land. But even still, I think that this is the right move. I'm going to swing with everybody. It's going to force him to block and see where things go. I do have the Sure Strike, and I do have a Burn Bright, which adds a whole bunch of power to board, so he just decides to go ahead and scoop. So I'm just going to throw this out there. We've just played Red 13. We just won a game at 7 life against a Final Fantasy VII character. We also played Gretchen Wieners. Lapis Lazuli threw me off for a minute because that name didn't click when I first heard it, but it's from Steven Universe, and I absolutely love it. I love the show. Not a huge fan of Steven Universe Future, but the first show was absolutely amazing. So this is one of the few track downs we've had that doesn't really look too good. I'm not too appetized by any of these cards. I decided to throw all of them onto the bottom. This is very unfortunate turn 2. I don't like any of it. As much as I'd like to keep the Dragonfire up there, I definitely want to draw lands. I have some high drops. I want to be going Panther into Double Vision, getting that double trigger, and then playing the Dragon to finish everything off. Now this is a bit of a rough situation here. I don't really have a lot of really solid plays that I'm very happy with at this point in the game. They have 3 power in the air, which isn't a ton, but those 3 back ends, there's 9 defense hiding that 3 power. It's going to be very hard to get all of them off the battlefield. I force a trade here. I gain 2 life back. I go back to 19, which isn't terrible. So I'm just trying to play what seems to be threatening, menacing creatures to try and keep him to hold back some of his power just long enough for me to get that dragon onto the battlefield. This Cultivate couldn't have come at a better time. I should have probably played the Cultivate then. I decided to get greedy and play the Double Vision to try and get something going there. I go with the 7-3, I crash in. I'm pretty sure he's going to block with the 3-2. When that happens, I'm not at all surprised. Still the 3 power in air. I'm at 16 life. I'm feeling pretty good. Feeling like, okay, this game is going alright. I'm going to start getting some double triggers, going to start getting some very powerful creatures on board, and boom, there's a Bolt Hound. So now that 3 power in air becomes 6 power in air, not including the 2 power that has come from the Bolt Hound with haste. So I am completely in the water here. I made a huge mistake by not playing that Cultivate last turn. I should have just played the Cultivate. I would have been able to play a dragon this turn, and I would have not completely stabilized, but been in a better spot than I am now. Now, I will be able to make 4 power on the ground. That is great, but it's just not going to deal with those flyers very well. So this draw here is a Heartfire. Very disappointing. It's just not going to do enough with this board state. I don't think I'm going to be able to get out of it. It just does not look very promising. Anything I play with that 2-3 they could tap down because they have a plethora of flyers over there. They still get a card in their hand. They're still at 20 life. I'm all the way down to 2. I need to be able to get the flyer out. I could not. So that's going to be the end of this draft for us, folks. Thanks for watching. I hope you had as much fun as we did making the video. Me and Obi will be up to more antics next week. Feel free to hit the like and subscribe button to see more of what we're up to, and we will be back soon with new videos.